G'day, welcome to Sights and Stories, a global Aussie journey, the podcast where a qualified historian with a passion for travel and the past will take you to the world's most iconic destinations. Each episode will explore not just the sights but the stories behind them, so that you get a better idea of what you're going to see and get more from the experience when you're overseas. Today we'll continue our travel series on Japan. Let's take a look at one of the sites in Tokyo which people often ask whether it's worth visiting. The grounds of the Tokyo Imperial Palace. Now I get it. You've only got a few days in Tokyo and there's a lot to do. There's things like going to Sensoji, there's the Meiji Shrine, there's the Tokyo Tower, there's Harajuku, there's Team Labs, there's Uno Park, there's with its Tokyo National Museum, there's Tokyo Skytree, there's a Ghibli Museum, there's the making of Harry Potter, there's Shinjuku, there's Tokyo Disneyland, there's Akihabara, there's Shibuya with its famous crossing. I get it, there's a lot to see in Tokyo. But my suggestion is if you have more than a few days, then you should definitely be considering going to the Tokyo Imperial Palace. And I've got three main reasons for this. But before we go into it, I think it's important to really look at, first of all, the history of the site. Because understanding the history of the site makes it more meaningful to go visit. And there's two parts of Japanese history that you can really tap into by going to the site. By the way, if you want to see photographs, I have got a PowerPoint running at the same time via YouTube, so you can go on there at any time to have a look at it. At the moment there's a map there of an aerial view of the site, as well as a map that gives you an idea of some of the places that you can see there. So in terms of the history of the site, the first part of Japanese history that it can tap into is the Tokugawa shogunate. Under the Tokugawas, we had their founder Tokugawa Ieyasu, who set up the modern-day city of Tokyo. Before he came, it was a small fishing village called Edo. Not many people living in it, and he had this grand idea of making sure that he could control the rest of Japan by setting up the city himself. And to do that, he built a giant castle called Edo Castle, which is the present-day site of the Tokyo Imperial Palace, the grounds of the Tokyo Imperial Palace. So at the site, he built a huge castle from which he could rule Japan, because before the Tokugawas, Japan experienced hundreds of years of feudal wars and basically constant warfare is something that a ruler does not want to happen if he's going to control the country. So he decided to set up a new capital away from Kyoto, and he started to have his headquarters at Edo at the castle, and he built the most impressive castle that had been built in the country. And around it, a huge city developed. Now, the Tokugawa were able to rule Japan for over 200 years, from 1603 through to 1868. And they did this by basically making sure that they controlled the daimyo, the feudal lords, which are underneath the shogun, the military commander of all of Japan, which was Tokugawa Ieyasu. And the way he did this is he basically made sure that they weren't able to reconstruct any or build any castles without his permission. He also insisted that they have two residences, one in their homeland and the other one back in Edo itself. And by having a residence in Edo itself, it meant that it made sure these daimyo or feudal lords could not build up an army without him knowing, or plot against him without knowing. And he also made sure that he made alliances with the most powerful clans by marrying his daughters to prospective sons of clan leaders. So he was able to control the daimyo in that fashion, and basically set up a very strict social system, which had himself, the Tokugawa shogunate, up the top, the daimyo next, and then the samurai, who were the professional soldiers who served their daimyo. Now, because the Tokugawa ruled Japan for so long, for over 250 years, and there were no wars during that period, the daimyo found it increasingly hard to employ or to justify the employment of their samurai because they were paying taxes and the taxes were going up, and they had to maintain those two residences. So to have samurai was really an expense they could do without. And so many samurai actually lost their jobs and became what was called ronin, or mercenary warriors, during this period. Others became impoverished and they were forced to borrow money. And they borrowed money off the lowest social class in the Tokugawa system, called the chonin, or the merchants. Now, the merchants were supposed to be at the bottom of society because they basically didn't produce anything. They only sold things, and so there was this view that because they only sold things, they belonged down the bottom of the social system. But because they started to lend money to the samurai at this point, they actually started to rise in social standing, while at the same time the samurai were dropping in social standing. And so the samurai were becoming upset by just before the Tokugawa shogunate ended. By the 1850s, things were getting quite tense within the social system. The daimyo weren't happy because obviously they were getting taxed more and had to let their samurai go. The samurai weren't happy because they were often in debt or without a job. At the same time, peasants were unhappy because as taxation increased, it meant the daimyo tried to extract more from them, so they weren't very happy, and there were a series of revolts towards the end of the Tokugawa shogunate from the peasants. And then you had the shonen, who seemed to be the winners in all this situation because people started to borrow off them, but the Tokugawa started to realise that the social system was starting to crack, and so they basically cancelled samurai debt. And they also had been borrowing money from the shonen themselves because they've been living extravagant lifestyles. And so they cancelled their own debt to the shonen. And so the shonen were actually unhappy with the Tokugawa as well. And so by the 1850s, things were starting to fall apart with the Tokugawa shogunate. And there was really one event which changed things, which was really the spark which ended the Tokugawa shogunate. And that was the arrival of foreigners. The Tokugawa had shut off Japan from foreigners for a couple of hundred years. They'd shut Japan's doors quite deliberately. One reason is because the Europeans possessed technology which was superior to the Japanese, and the Tokugawa realised that there was always a potential that one of their daimyo opposition could get a hold of something which could prove threatening to them. But they also wanted to turn back to traditional ways, and so they shut the borders of Japan. And for 200 years, this stayed the case. There was only one Dutch ship allowed to visit Dejima Island at Nagasaki every year for quite some time. But the British tried to open Japanese doors to trade and were unsuccessful. So did the Russians, and they were unsuccessful as well. But there was one Western power that was going to not accept no for an answer, and that was the Americans. In 1853, Commodore Perry arrived with these black ships at Uraga Bay and basically presented a set of demands to the Tokugawa shogunate. Veiled threats, basically to open up his country to trade to America, or they'll be back. And because they sailed into the harbour with coal-powered ships that were painted black, the populace were quite scared of what happened, and it sent shockwaves through the Japanese system. So the Tokugawa were kind of in a position. They were in a position that basically, if they opened the door to foreigners, then some people in Japan didn't agree with that, and they would rebel against that. If they didn't open the doors, then the Americans, who clearly possessed more technology, could be a military threat to the country. And so they were in a catch-22, and Commodore Perry basically said, well, I'll give you a year to think about it, and then I'll be back. And true to his word, he was back a year later. But before that, a lot of samurai were actually starting to think the Tokugawa shogunate should be replaced. And they started to have an ideology that was called Jemu Tennu, which basically was a belief that the thing should return back to rule under a divine emperor. And there was a renewed push towards Shintoism rather than Buddhism, which was the ancient Japanese religion, which emphasized the worship of ancestors, traditions, and reverence to the emperor. And so this was happening in the background while the Tokugawa were deciding, well, what do we do? Do we open the doors or not? When the Americans returned in 1854, they decided to open the doors. And basically, we had a change to Japan. What happened is there was a series of revolts against the Tokugawa, and their rule ended. It ended in 1868. They lost control of Edo, and a new rule was proclaimed, the Meiji Restoration Period, which is under a new ruler called Matsuhito, who took the name Emperor Meiji. And you can see a picture of him on the YouTube if you want to. And with Emperor Meiji, there was a push for basically a total change to Japan, an opening up basically to Western ideas. And so they embraced everything Western. They actually invited advisors from overseas to help them get up a modern system of communications and telegraph, for instance, railway, also to develop their military and to develop a factory system, and to adopt Western culture such as clothing, dancing, entertainment, even food. Everything was Western was embraced. And the reason for doing that was out of selfishness, really. There was a view that the Americans had shown them that they had technology that Japan did not. And there was a realization that the rest of Asia had was already under the control of European or Western countries. And so Japan did not want to lose its independence. And the only way to make sure that they didn't lose their independence and were self-sufficient was to develop their country to an extent that they were able to repel any Western threat. And in fact, gain self-sufficiency by having a strong military. And so the push was on for change within Japan. And basically, they adopted everything Western, like I said, railways, telegraphs, new forms of communication. A massive push was put into factories. And during this period, there was actually the development of what we called zaibatsu, which were family-owned companies, massive companies that started to develop factories such as Mitsubishi, which is a major car producer today, which you've probably heard of. They developed at this time. So what happened over time is Japan modernized itself, and over time the civilian government lost control to a military one. And that occurred largely in the 1930s as a result of a series of economic difficulties in Japan, which really put the civilian government under pressure. Even before the Depression, Japan suffered from an export problem, and basically the only solution, people thought, was the military and expansion into other territory, particularly into China and Korea. It was felt that that was needed. And so this military dictatorship eventually took Japan into a war. And the war actually devastated the site that we're talking about today, because towards the end of the war, there was massive firebombing of the city of Japan, and of Japan itself, and particularly Tokyo. And the Tokyo Imperial grounds were actually bombed twice to a major extent. The first one was on the 25th of May, 1945, and the second time it was bombed quite a lot was on the 29th of July, 1945. And this is the reason why many people say, don't worry about going to the Tokyo Imperial Palace grounds because most of it was destroyed in the war. There's no point going there. Edo Castle was destroyed, and the Imperial Palace, which took its place, was destroyed. But that's actually not the case. There's actually a lot to see at the site, and today, and it's the first reason really why you should go there if you're a history buff. You just need to go there. It's like looking at archaeology, as you're doing a walking tour. And I'm going to take you through how you can do that walking tour very shortly. But I have got some pictures of the firebombing at the site of at Tokyo during the war. And towards the end of the war, the actual Imperial Palace was an important site still, because it had underground bunkers where the emperor was residing with the high command, the officers, the generals and admirals of Japan. And it was from this location where he heard of the nuclear bombs being dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which devastated the country. And it was from this site that he actually made his famous broadcast to the Japanese people, telling them that Japan was going to surrender and accept the terms that were put into the Potsdam Declaration by the Allies during the war. It was the first time that Japanese people had actually heard their emperor talk. It was such a big deal because the emperor was considered divine. They were considered a god. So to hear the emperor actually talk was it was literally hearing a god talk, for which many Japanese people just burst into tears, and they were upset that it had come to the point where the war had made the emperor having to talk to his people about the loss in the war. So basically. It was from these grounds that some very historic things happened towards the end of the war. But as I said, the site was firebombed during the war, and a lot of it was destroyed. But that doesn't mean that you can't see some wonderful things connected to both Tokugawa history and also, of course, the Meiji period. And today it is the current residence of the Imperial family. So we might go into the site and how you tackle it, but before I do that, I notice there's a couple of questions from people already. Was any of this influenced by other world events or just with Japan? Well, the firebombing, of course, was as a result of the Japanese proclaiming war from the attack on Pearl Harbor. With the Americans, that basically opened up the Pacific War. And it was out of a need really for self-sufficiency, as I said before. All of this changed to the site from the Edo Castle period of the Tokugawa to the Meiji period, where an imperial palace was put in its place, was as a result of the Japanese feeling like they needed to maintain their independence. They needed to make sure that Japan was not going to be under control of a foreign power. And I think I answered the other question on, as you said there, with an emperor being considered a deity, being considered a god. But I'll move on and we'll look at how basically to tackle the site, how best to go there and experience it. And I think the first thing you need to do is enter the East Gardens, which is in the northern side of the palace grounds. The East Gardens, basically, if you start from the northern side, you're going to move through two gateways. And these gateways were built during the Edo period, during the Tokugawa. So you've got Tiasomon, the first gateway that was built in 1636. And there's another gate as well, the Northern Drawbridge Gate, which was opened around the same time. And you'd have to pass through both of those gates, the Tiasomon Gate and the Kitahana Bashe Mon Gate, to basically make your way into the gardens. So you'll see the impressive gateways, and you'll get an idea about how this site was defended and how it would have been hard for anyone to get close to the shogun without first going through being detected by guards. They're impressive gateways. You can see the magnificent stonework that went into the construction of the temple, as well as the architecture, the traditional architecture of the Edo period. So I think it's really good to walk through from the northern side of the East Gardens. And then as you make your way through the gardens, you'll actually get to what I consider to be one of the best parts of the garden, and that is the Tensho Dai, basically the castle keep foundation. There was basically a really big fire in 1657, which destroyed the biggest tower, the biggest castle keep in Japan, that was constructed by the Tokugawa. And immediately after it was destroyed, they set about building a new one. And they basically laid the foundations, which you can see there in the East Gardens, and you can actually walk up and experience what it would have been like to walk into the keep. They didn't finish the keep because it was pointed out to the Tokugawa that there's just peace in the country, so what's the point of spending all these resources on building another giant keep when they had firm control over the country and there was no threat of war. And so they stopped at the stone foundation. But what you can see and what you can experience is you can walk up the ramp towards the that would have been the opening into the keep, and you can stand on top of the actual platform, and you can overlook the East Gardens and get some fantastic shots of the city and overlooking the gardens from that site. And what's amazing is there's no concrete between any of the blocks. They're perfectly cut to all fit together so that they don't fall apart, and they're angled to withstand earthquakes. So this is modern engineering in a way that was used at fantastic engineering for the time period, the 1600s. So that's the first impressive thing that you will see once you get through those gates on the northern side of the palace. That's really good to see. And then as you work your way through the East Gardens and you continue to walk, you'll actually experience some guardhouses that are still standing there today. And these guardhouses were there to protect the shogun by having basically guards there to inspect any visitors onto the castle grounds. And you can see the original guardhouses. They're still there. Built from the 1650s. The first one is the Heiken Bansho Guardhouse, which held roughly about 120 samurai. You've also got the Doshin Bansho Guardhouse, which held the low-ranking samurai, whose job it was to check visitors to the castle. And you've got the O Bansho Guardhouse, which was reserved for the high-ranking samurai. And they were really the last checkpoint. So if you got through sort of like the ordinary pleb sort of samurai, getting through that last checkpoint was the most difficult, because those guards were tested samurai, the best of the best, so to speak, who protected the inner bailey of the castle precinct. And so you can see these guardhouses, take photos of them, and what you'll actually see is on some of the tiles, you'll actually get to see some of the pictures of the royal crests, which are quite interesting. I'd definitely check them out. So the guardhouses are there for you to check. And then as you go through the gardens, you see yet even more Tokugawa history. There's actually a very good defensive turret called the Fujimi Yagara, which was originally built in 1606. It was destroyed by that same fire in 1657, but then it was rebuilt 2 years later, because it's important to have defensive turrets. You need to see your enemy from far. And the reason why it was called the Fujimi Yagara is because apparently the guards could see from within the guardhouse Mount Fuji. That's how far they could see away into the distance. So the structure was actually renovated because it was damaged again in the 1923 Tokyo earthquake, but it is still true to its 1600s construction, and it's magnificent to go and have a look at, and you can walk right up to it and get photos of it with its impressive green and grey tiles. So it's a fantastic, another fantastic piece of Tokugawa history. Someone's just written there, how far was Fuji from the Yagara turret? I don't know offhand, but I can tell you it's past the edge of Tokyo, modern day Tokyo City, which holds 41 million people, including the suburbs of Tokyo. So it is many, many, many kilometers away. So you can see way in the distance. So it's a quite impressive little structure to have a look at while you're in the East Gardens. And so not only do you see, the platform of the keep and able to walk up it, walk through gates, see defensive turrets and guardhouses, as you walk out of the East Gardens, you actually see another impressive gateway. It's called the Ottoman Gate. And the Ottoman Gate is really impressive because you get this view of how it was meant to defend the actual castle itself. Basically, it consists of two gates, and one is larger than the other, and they're deliberately set at right angles. And the reason why they're done like that is so that if attackers got through the first gate, they then had to make their way through the second gate, but it would have been very difficult because it was a very confined space. And the walls around the gates allowed for around about 120 archers to stand on top of them. And so basically they would have been pinned down by being bombarded by arrows if they even made it through the first gateway. So you get that sense of, how a castle would have been very hard to attack. And so once you make your way through that gateway, you can then go into some other parts of the grounds. So if you walk along the road that's opposite that gateway, you'll soon make your way across. You'll see the moat next to the road, which will give you an idea of how the castle's defended again. But on one of the corners of the actual gardens, you'll see another excellent defensive turret. It's called the Tatsumi Yagara. And the Tatsumi Yagara is actually the only original Tokugawa corner defensive turret that remains at the site. And it is an iconic photo to take. Many people take it because basically if you go on a day when it's sunny, you get the reflection in the moat from the turret. And so you can take these magnificent photos of the turret as you walk past it. And, honestly, it's a sight to behold. Once you walk past that, you can actually walk past another gateway called the Kikyo-mon Gate, which was also built during the Tokugawa shogunate. It's actually the starting point for some walking tours from there that you can choose to go on. They take about 75 minutes, but I don't think you really need to do that. I really don't think you need to go on a walking tour. I think once you listen to this and once you gain an appreciation of the actual site, you can do it yourself. There's plenty of signage, and it's easy to make your way around, and you go at your own pace and you take the photos when you want to, with your family or whatever in the background. I really think a walking tour is not necessary, but you can walk up to that gate and you can see it. But I'd encourage you to keep walking because what you're going to walk to a few minutes away is the most iconic photo from the Imperial Palace grounds. And that is the Nijabi Bridge, okay, the Nijabashi Bridge. It is basically the bridge that leads into the official Imperial grounds where the current Emperor lives with his family. You can't actually go into the Imperial Palace. So it's not like Buckingham Palace or the White House in Washington, D.C., where you can get tickets or you can get permission to go inside the addresses and really get a sense of what it would be like to be the Queen or the President of the United States. And I know that might sound disappointing, and that's why a lot of people go, oh, it's not worth going to the Imperial Palace because you can't walk into it. But you don't need to, because the thing is, when you walk up to this gate, this bridge, the Nijabashi Bridge, basically you get a sense of what it's like. It is typical Meiji construction. So this taps into now the Meiji restoration period, because you can see the stone bridge. It was built in 1877, and like I said, it serves as the entry and exit point to the private residence of the emperor. It's also called the eyeglass bridge, because if you go again when it's sunny, you can see the double arch reflecting into the water, and it gives this view of an eyeglass. So it's a very iconic photo to take. There's actually another bridge behind it. It's an iron bridge that also serves as an entry and exit point to the palace. You can see that if you walk up to the Nijabashi Bridge, you'll be able to see the second iron bridge as well. So this is iconic. You can walk right up to the bridge. You can take some photos of the entry. There will be police and guards there, security guards, but they won't stop you taking photos. And I think it's really good to see the actual ironwork that's around the bridge as well, particularly the lighting, because it's so typical Mijay. So it really is a spectacular photo there. So now we've tapped into both Tokugawa and Mijay history, all in one site. And if you on your way out, as you go back to a station, and there's plenty of stations you can go and visit. Tokyo Station's right nearby, but there's others as well. There's two more structures you can see on your way back. One is the Masashiga Kusanagi statue, and this is a very famous statue. It's one of Tokyo's big three statues. Three major bronze statues, and it's basically a samurai that was incredibly loyal to an emperor in the Genko War in 1330. It's an impressive statue. You can walk up to it and take photos. It's just a stone's throw away from the Nijibashi bridge. So I'd recommend seeing that. And then also, for those history buffs out there, if you really want to tap into World War II history and occupation history, there is a famous tower just down the road called the DN Tower 21. And the DN Tower 21 was actually the official building, the former headquarters of US General Douglas MacArthur during the occupation period. You can easily see it from walking next to the Imperial Palace, and you can take a photo of it. So that's for all those history buffs who want, World War II history buffs who want to see something of that. So as you can see, the site, look, honestly, if you've got more than a few days in Tokyo, it's definitely a place to go to connect to Japanese history, Tokugawa history, as well as Mijay history, as well as that World War II history as well. It's all there, and it's walking. It's a great walking tour, and that really brings me to the second reason why you should do this. Japan can be really full on. It can be a very hustle and bustle city. 41 million people. People are everywhere. You hear all the noises and the sounds of the city. The Imperial grounds give you a chance to get away from that. If you're somebody who needs to maybe tap into nature a little bit and get away from all the hustle and bustle for a little bit, it's an easy walk, and it can really give you a bit of relaxation in the middle of the day. That's another reason. And the third reason, which lots and lots of people go to this garden for, is it's spectacular during either spring or particularly autumn. The autumn colours in the East Gardens are spectacular. And basically, I'm just putting up a picture, by the way, of DN Tower 21. Just forgot to put that one up, but that is up there now on YouTube. And I've also got some pictures of what it's like to walk in the gardens in autumn. Basically, you get the yellow and red leaves in the foliage everywhere. And so you can get some really spectacular photos. If you're a keen gardener, it is one of the best gardens to go in Tokyo. It is so well done, perfectly looked after, as you expect from a Japanese garden. But the colours are spectacular. So, it's worth going there. And you can also experience cherry blossoms there in the spring. So if you're a cherry blossom hunter, it's definitely worth going. You can tap into history and see cherry blossoms at the same time and get away from the hustle and bustle. What more can you ask for? This is a great site. So if you've got more than a few days in Tokyo, definitely check out the Tokyo Imperial Palace grounds. They are definitely worth going to. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I hope that it's not only provided you with a bit of a historical insight into the site, but it's also allowed you to gain more understanding of it, so that when you go there, you're able to take that in, and it really enhances your visit. And it's got you really excited to go to Tokyo and to see the palace for yourself and to do the walking tour yourself. Don't think you can't do it. Just because it's Japan doesn't mean you can't do it. You can do it yourself. You don't have to speak Japanese. If you're somebody that's worried about that, don't worry. Japan, very easy to walk around. Like I said, plenty of signage. You're not going to get lost. particularly if you're able to use Google Maps on your phone at the same time. You're not going to get lost. So if you've got any further questions about the site, please feel free to drop them in to the chat now. I'll go about answering anything that's there. And somebody's just asked, are the people nice over there? The Japanese people are incredible, incredibly respectful. If you ever look lost, they will go out of their way to look after you, honestly. When I've been in Japan and I've looked lost, I've had people come up to me and say, are you okay? What are you looking for? And, they're keen to help you out. So you don't have to speak Japanese. A lot of Japanese people speak really good English. And if they don't, they'll find somebody that does. So when you go into shops and you're trying to buy something and somebody doesn't speak very good English, they will find another assistant who does, and they will be able to help you out with whatever you want to buy. Honestly, it's a beautiful country to go visit, highly respectful people, and I guess when you're there, you should do that as well. Use your manners. Arigato gozaimasu is always a good term to understand and to say when people do something nice to you in Japan. Also take note that when you're walking through the gardens, you cannot drop any rubbish. There won't be rubbish bins there for you. Typical in Japan, rubbish bins are not everywhere. So put a little bag into your backpack, and if you eat something, if you choose to eat something while you're there, remember to stop and eat. Don't walk and eat. That's considered to be rude. But once you stop and eat, put your rubbish inside the little bag inside your backpack. Take it with you back to your hotel and put it in your bin in your hotel room. Don't leave it on the grounds of anywhere in the grounds unless there is a bin that you're lucky enough to find. But it is as a result of that, you won't see graffiti, you won't see any rubbish, and that's what makes Japan so special. So yes, don't worry about if the people are nice over there. They're fantastic. I've got another question there. Is it a good location to go to with kids? Yes, absolutely. I've taken my kids there, and they're not history buffs as such, but I tell you what, once I was able to show them and teach them things, they found the site absolutely fascinating. They really enjoyed the walk, and they enjoyed taking photographs because honestly, it's a very beautiful place to go. So we absolutely loved our time as a family walking through the East Gardens and the Palace grounds and taking photos. It was a great experience, and that's why I'm suggesting it to you today. It's not just good it's good really for everyone, for a single person going through Tokyo, for a couple, or for family. It's ideal for anyone. If you're thinking about food and stuff like that around the place, once you exit the grounds, it'll be easy enough to find a konbini, like a convenience store, a 7-Eleven or a Family Mart. They're spread around the place because you're right in the heart of the city. So there's plenty of food options as well. So I think, is there any other questions that people would like to ask? I'll just leave it there for a second. But like I said, this is a site that you should definitely have on your list. A lot of people write it off, and I understand there's lots of exciting things to do in Tokyo. But if you've got more than a few days in Tokyo, if you've got a week in Tokyo, you definitely need to check this site out. Honestly, it is a great place to visit, and you'll learn a lot about the history just by walking around and taking photos and reading the signage, which is in both Japanese and English. So you'll be able to learn heaps. Anyway, if you've got any further questions, what I'd encourage you to do is just drop them onto the chat, and I'll endeavour to answer them. And be sure to catch my next episode on another exciting part of Tokyo, as I endeavour to take you through throughout Japan. But the first in the series will be specialising on Tokyo, because that's a place where most people go there. So somebody's asked, what is the population in Japan? Ooh, I'd have to look that one up because I don't know, but I know that there's 41 million people currently residing in Japan's city of Tokyo itself, if you include the suburbs. 41 million makes it the biggest city in the world. Does it feel crowded? Somebody just asked. Yes, it can feel crowded, particularly in subway stations if you travel on them in rush hour. So basically between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning, and from about 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night, that's when most Japanese people are moving in and out of the city, and the trains get packed. And I mean by packed, I mean like faces squashed up against the windows at times. So my suggestion is do not catch the train during rush hours. Either get up really early in the morning, which is what I like doing, getting up nice and early, seeing the city when it's first coming to life, or enjoy your sleep in and make sure you go after the peak hours finished and then enjoy your day. But yeah, it is crowded at times. But look, if you walk through the Tokyo Imperial grounds, you're not going to be shoulder to shoulder. You're going to have plenty of room to walk around, and same with most of the tourist sites in the city. It's not shoulder to shoulder. It's just when you use the transport, you can really feel it. Some of the shopping centres, you get the sense that there's lots of people. Places like Harajuku and Shibuya, for instance, lots of people. But that's the excitement of it. That's what you come for, right? To experience a little bit of that as well. So, yes, it can feel crowded at times, but when you go to the Imperial Palace grounds, I guarantee you will not. You will be able to experience the fresh air and having your own space and enjoying tapping into Japanese history. And that's what makes it great, as well as, loving the nature around you. I think it's a great place. So like I said, next time I'll take you on another part of the city. I'll try and find something maybe a little bit out there for people to discover and to think about in their travels. But until then, by the way, if you enjoy listening to this, don't be scared to press the follow button. That would be great. And remember to check out the YouTube if you want to see some photos of what I've showed today. You can have a look at that as well. But until next time, I wish you well and safe travels to everyone who's abroad. Catch you later, mate.